Hi guys, and welcome. In this video, possibly more than one video, depending on how long the whole thing takes, I am going to be cleaning up and freshening up and servicing this Swiss-made Sheffield diver, and I've been after one of these for a little while. I'm just going to take it out of the bag so it's not rattling away and being distracting there. And I've been after one of these for quite a while, just because I quite like the fact that it's a Sheffield diver, and I'm originally from Sheffield in South Yorkshire, although this has got absolutely nothing to do with Sheffield, but I quite like it because of that. And I came across this one. This was actually an eBay find and came all the way from the US, and it does run. It needs a clean, but the balance does swing, as you can see. If you give that a shake, you can see the second hand does attempt to move, and it's just a bit sort of grungy and a bit of a mess overall. But I'm just going to pop the back off and show you the innards. Now you can see there, just before I do that, the front looks a bit of a mess, but it is in fact just all the crystal, which is an acrylic crystal, so that will buff out and polish out. And if I take this off, a really good thick solid case back, and it's originally what is it, water resistant to 338 feet, which is actually quite impressive for an old watch and pin pallet type watch like this one is. Has a shield in the back there, and there you can see the movement, which is a very simple pin pallet movement with does it say how many jewels? One whole jewel, which is that one right there, as you can see. And so yes, very simple movement, but quite a nice one as it goes, and a very well made case. It's absolutely grungy and horrible, and got lots of build-up of DNA from years worth of being on someone's wrist, I dare say. And I'm just going to get a pair of tweezers and just pop the stem out. It'll help if I use the actual stem release instead of what I was pressing, and I'll pop that dial out so that you can take a look at that. You can see there with you can actually see the crystals really badly scratched on the outside. And it has a little cyclops window which is built into the inside of the crystal, which is nice because that means the outside is completely smooth, so I can buff that whole thing without fear of damaging the cyclops. But you can see that the dial is absolutely beautiful. It's really nice, and the loom is very good, and it's in excellent condition. So first thing I'm going to do, this is already uncased now, so obviously I'm going to just leave that like so, and then I can start stripping that down, ready for cleaning and rebuilding and servicing. And then I shall take apart the case, and the bezel will just pop off, so use my case knife to just wiggle that bezel off like so. And as you can see, years of grunge and DNA and nastiness and unpleasant things tucked under there. So all this will come apart, and this is all going to get thrown into some hot soapy water and give it a thoroughly good scrubbing. I'm going to give that all a clean up, then give the movement service, and get it all, get the crystal buffed up and polished and looking nice. And then I have a perfect strap to accompany this, and we'll jump onto that, and I shall be back shortly with the cleaned up movement, and then we'll start on, sorry, with the cleaned up case, and then we'll start on the movement. Back after a quick wash in quite literally just some hot soapy water, so using washing up liquid or dish soap if you're in America. And you can see we've got already a massive improvement, just having removed years of DNA and muck and nastiness and all that horrible sort of gunge and what have you that was around the edges of everything. Now this case does have a little bit of wear, corrosion and brassing to the edges anyway, which, you know, is to be expected with an old watch that's probably rattled around in a drawer or a box for a good portion of its life, as these old watches tend to do when they stop working. People, you know, watches of a certain price point, people just don't bother getting serviced as a rule. But you can see it's cleaned up quite nicely with just a scrubbing water. So the next step is to sort this crystal out, which as you can see is very heavily scratched. My preferred method is to start off with, I use these. Now these are little offcuts of sheets of a sandpaper type material that you can buy, which is called micro mesh. And they're available in really, really fine grades, starting from 2,400 grit and going up to 12,000 grit, which is incredibly smooth. And 12,000 grit will actually leave an almost mirror polished surface on anything. Following that, these incidentally I became aware of through model making, because they're used for flatting the clear coat prior to a final polish on a civilian model kit where you want a showroom type polish finish. And following these, I use Tamiya polishing compounds, which again are part of the whole process of polishing a civilian model kit, say a model of a car that you want a showroom finish on. And they come in 3 grades: coarse, fine and finish. I actually only use the fine and finish of the 2, because I find that the coarse is not necessary after the 12,000 grit micro mesh. And this will actually leave unless you've got some very, very deep gouges that you can't get out without taking too much of the material away, this will leave a smooth, like new finish on the crystal. To begin, we have a tub of warm water with a tiny, tiny drop of washing up liquid or dish soap in there. That's simply just to break the surface tension and helps the water, make sure the water doesn't bead up anywhere. And you start off with the coarsest of the grits, which is 2,400 grit, and give that a good soaking in the water. You can actually just throw those in there and leave them sitting in there. And taking the watch, and similarly I like to dip the crystal, though that's not strictly necessary, and you just start sanding away with the paper, using the pad of your thumb to apply gentle pressure. You don't need to press hard. You just like anything involving cutting or sanding, you should let the material do the work and not rely on pressing harder to cut more quickly. And it's a gradual process. What I like to do personally is sand in one specific direction with one of the papers, and then once that's down to a smooth acceptable level, I take the next grade of paper and sand in the opposite direction, which would be like so. And what this does is it enables you to see if you've actually sanded out all the previous marks. This is a technique that I picked up when I used to work in a garage and I used to spray cars. And this is something that you do for a high quality paint finish. You actually sand in one direction after one layer and the other direction after another layer, using different grits of paper, to make sure that you've gotten all the previous layers lines out, because they will show up in a final polished finish. And every now and again you just take a paper towel and give that a wipe, and obviously you can tell while it's wet it looks really, really good, but you can see, of course, once you dry it off, that the scratches are still there and very, very evident. So it's a slow process. You just have to keep going at it until you've got it smooth. So I'm going to carry on with that, and we'll be back in a little while. After the micro mesh, working through the ranges to the finest of 12,000 grit, we are left with this, which, as you can see, is quite a nice shiny finish. There's a couple of tiny little marks on there which I would have had to have sanded out further, and it is a thick acrylic crystal, but I don't want to take too much off of it. But as you can see already, the difference in that is quite remarkable compared to how it was. As you can see there, looking through the crystal to the dial. And the next step is to use the polishing compounds. To apply it, I just use a soft piece of cotton cloth. This is just an old t-shirt, and it is quite simply a case of taking a small amount onto the cloth and dab that around the crystal like so, and then just work that around in a circular motion all over, making sure to go right to the edges of the crystal. Because this one's a curved crystal, it's important to make sure you go right the way to the edges, and you just rub at this until you get a little bit, it's kind of hard to describe, you get a little bit of a squeak when you know it's done as much as it can do. You get you can feel the surface that you're rubbing on gets smoother, and it's, if you listen carefully, you won't be able to hear this over the lav mic that I'm using here, but it kind of feels like it's sticking a little bit, and you get a little bit of a squeak, which is when you know that the surface has gotten as flush as it can using the polishing compound. So that still needs a little bit more, so I'm just going to take a clean part of the cloth and wipe that off, and you can hear the squeak there, but it still needs a little bit more polish. And then I do exactly the same with the finish compound, which will take it right the way to a glass-like finish. Here we are with the final polishing on the crystal, and you can see, hopefully there, that comes across quite nicely, what a difference that makes. Obviously it will be much clearer once I've reassembled the entire thing, but just sort of pop the bezel on there, so you can see overall it's given it a much, much nicer appearance, just from the simple act of giving everything a good clean with some hot soapy water and giving the crystal a polish. So next is the disassembly of the movement in preparation for servicing.